I have a background noise like an air tube. Like
Yeah,
every time I speak, I wonder if I should put my headset on.
it's not you. It's Colleen. Now I've muted her. You shouldn't hear that.
Oh, you're right. It's
Yeah,
gone.
it must be something with Colleen's either her speakers or the microphones close to the speakers or something. Because once I've muted it, the background sound seems to have gone. So yeah, there we go. Do you want? Is there anything you'd like to do today in terms of questions, or where do you want to start?
Well, we had a couple. I would like to learn more about the trading floor, and then Denise wanted to know something, and I don't remember what it was. Maybe Colleen remembers. So,
Okay.
do you remember Colleen?
I'm not hearing her now.
Is that better?
It's we could hear you, but you're making a buzzing sound. Can't hear you at the moment.
Okay. I
But
can change
hearing a
headsets.
little background noise, so
I'll change headsets.
okay.
Let me see if I can find it. Was on Facebook. What? Let me see. It was in the group. Well, right here. Um, Denise wanted to know about the tree of life. She wanted to know about more about the tree of life.
Okay. Okay, let's try calling now.
Is that better now?
Yeah, that's much better. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, the phone. Hold on, sorry.
Okay. So did Colleen want to ask anything, or was
She didn't say. She just asked us what we were interested in, and
okay?
I don't think she said much.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll just wait for her to get back a second.
Well, I'll tell you a testimony while we wait.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
Good.
I do a lot of dream interpretation,
Yeah.
and more and more um, when I'm dealing with people's lives, I myself see what's happening spiritually and what's happening in the realm of judgment. And so I've been going up with them after the dream interpretation, going up with them, getting a scroll, getting it open, reading the judgment, and taking care of things.
Yeah.
It's becoming a very useful way to minister with people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Because I think a lot of the things where we've done things previously, as God is giving greater revelation, we don't throw out everything that we've done, but we actually see that we can do it in a slightly different way, or a more connected to heaven way, which then enables us to have greater degree of authority in administering it. I certainly over the past few months have really found that I now no longer want to do anything without having a mandate from God to do it. And I think it really ties in with Jesus seeing what the Father was doing and then doing what he saw him doing. Therefore, he had an authorization or a mandate to do it. And I think that's really what God is wanting us to do. As we mature, we can operate in godly mandates rather than just the few sort of bits and pieces that we've done before. So yeah, I think it's great where we're sort of adding different dimensions to things that we do and starting to see them more effective. Yeah, it's very positive. There's Denise. Okay. Okay. So if you want, if I'm sort of happy to talk about the questions, the things you've asked. The issue of trading floors. Um, do you want to talk about that from a positive perspective or from the negative perspective? Because there's two aspects of trading which are slightly different.
I don't know a lot either way. Uh, I hear people mention it, and I've been looking through teachings, and I just haven't found hardly anything on it.
Okay. Right. Well, from the perspective of trading, the word trading comes from Ezekiel 28, where it talks about the different kings and princes in Tyre, and we then go into that, and it talks about Satan being on the fire stones, and it talks about the king of Tyre trading and things like that. And going back to its root, what happened was when Satan, who was the covering cherub, Lucifer as he was, looked into the manifestation of the glory of God, and saw into the revelation that God was going to release into mankind, and his heart and desire for man to rule and to co-rule with him on earth and in the heavens. Satan's responsibility was to receive that revelation, and his body was covered with 9 stones, and those 9 stones were representative of the fire stones, and they were to reflect that revelation out into creation, and he had a responsibility for that. And also he was the music bearer and the light bearer, and that was his role. And he was a cherub which was close to God. But what he did, he used the information he had, because he was offended, because he thought he was going to lose his position to man, and because man is higher than the angels in the economy of God, he used the information and traded with it. Now, when you trade something, you exchange something for something else. And so he used the information that he had from God and the revelation of it, and went to the angels, and he gave them that information, and the third of them rebelled with him against what God's desire was. And so trading in its basic form is you give something and you receive something. And you can do that in a positive sense, in that, let's say you receive thanks from someone or appreciation from somebody. Let's say you've ministered to someone and they sort of thank you, and they express their appreciation. It says, Jesus said, you can receive your reward on earth from men, and that reward, that's it, you get it. But it's better to have a reward that comes from heaven. And so when I receive things like that, I take it before the throne, and it's like I cast my crowns before the Lord. And it's because I want it to be all about him and not about me. And so I can exchange what I've received and present it as an offering before God. And so in doing that, I can receive back from him greater. And it's like the principle of sowing and reaping, if you like. What you sow gets multiplied and you can reap back. And so if we trade those positive things, and you can trade, for instance, I can trade on the blood of Jesus, because the blood of Jesus can be applied, and I can use that in my life to effect change and transformation. And I can exchange my life for his life. So very much trading in a positive sense is like a covenant exchange. In a covenant exchange, they walked through a figure of 8, through a sacrifice, and they exchanged coats, or they exchanged blood. In a blood covenant, they would cut their wrists and exchange their blood, or they would exchange weapons. And so what it was saying was, let's say there was 2 kings, and one had a nation which was a warrior nation, another had a nation which was a farming nation. And when they made a covenant, an agreement, they would exchange their clothes in the symbol to say, what is yours belongs to me, and what's mine belongs to you, in covenant exchange. And therefore, when there was an issue, let's say the farming nation, someone tried to attack them, they could call on their allies to come and fight on their behalf. When the warrior nation had need for food, they could call on the farming nation to provide food, because they'd made a covenant and they stood in a position of exchange so that one received from the other and vice versa. So when we come into covenant with God because of the new covenant that Jesus did in his blood, in his death, then we exchange our old things for new things. So we can exchange our old life for a new life. We can exchange our old nature for a new nature. We can exchange sickness, disease from our old thing for health and wholeness. And so we can exchange those things which belong to the old for the new things that we get in Christ and in God. And so that is a form of trading in which we give something to him. We present ourselves as a living sacrifice to him, but he gives us the fullness of the manifestation of his kingdom in return. And so there's a whole load of things there which we can use the word of God as a trade. Okay, God says this, I'm going to take that to God, and so he will then, in me bringing it to him, I am going to use what he said to say, God, you said this, and as a result of me bringing it to him, then I'm going to have an expectation that that is going to be outworked in my life. So there's a whole, Ian Clayton uses trading as a form of doing that, and I think people struggle with the word trading, but I found people find it easier to think of an exchange. So you exchange one thing for another. Now, when it comes to the negative side of that, well, think a more positive side. In terms of financially, we can come and we can sow, and if we bring our finances to exchange to God, we can exchange them for a multiplication back in the kingdom. Now, in negative trading, Ian talks about, I think, 7 trading floors where we exchange things in our soul for fulfillment, to have our soul's needs met, but the offer of having those needs met that the enemy gives us is to use worldly things to meet spiritual needs. And so they always come with a hook which causes damage, hurt, pain in those exchanges. Now, I have difficulty remembering my trading in that way, because I dealt with it and it all got wiped out from my memory. So I can remember the principle, and I know I taught it when I did a transformation series, and I explained, I went through the 7 trading floors, asked for revelation of how that worked in my life, how I traded in various things as an exchange. And I found that I had, quite often it's quite subtle, but I had exchanged things for things that the enemy offered as a quick fix, and then he hooked me into it that then you needed more of that to actually meet your needs. And so there's, I think, 7 trading floors, trading floor of tire and Athaliah and Jezebel and Delilah and Leviathan and Apollyon. There may be a few others. Cain. And an example of one of them is like gossip. I can share something with somebody, but the motive of my heart in sharing it is that it will make either me feel better because I'm putting someone else down, and that's a form of trading, using information to make me feel. No, I did, and I found that you were able to. One other thing, particularly with men, is in terms of pornography, you are offered a image of something which is not the real thing, but it fulfills a need which is not fully fulfilled. But the enemy traps men into it because they're offering something to them which is not real, but actually it appears real, and it traps people into it because they want an emotional response from something without the actual physical attachment, and it causes addiction, and a lot of the trading causes addiction. Now, I know Ian's done a basic teaching on the different trading floors and what they do and what they mean, and I do struggle to share it because I just can't remember anymore. I put it off dealing with the stuff for about a year because I was like, I dealt with a lot of things in my life, and then this was really dealing with the thoughts and intentions and the motives of the heart, rather than the physical things or the behavioral issues. This was dealing with the motives of my heart, and therefore I had to look at those motives at a deeper level, and I put it off for quite a while because it didn't sound too palatable, really. But eventually I needed to teach it, and I don't teach anything that I've not done. And God gave me a time frame because He told me, I want you to teach this in 3 weeks. So you've got 3 weeks to work it out. And it was a horrible 3 weeks. I had to face the deeper motives of my soul, my heart, not necessarily that was functioning now, but had functioned in the past a lot. And it was hard. I had to acknowledge and own where my motives have been wrong. And I remember one thing. I remember talking to a national figure here, and I went to talk to him about some things, and I found myself sharing some of my testimonies of what I'd done in the heavens, and I was sitting there sort of just talking to him, and as I was talking, God spoke to me, and He said, why are you sharing these things with him? And I sort of thought, well, because it's interesting. No, you said, why are you sharing these things with him? And I had to acknowledge that some of what I was sharing was because I wanted his approval. So I was sharing some of my encounters looking for him to approve because I was sharing some of the things I'd done with him. And I just suddenly thought, oh no, so I just shut up. And I didn't share anything else with him unless he actually specifically asked something. So I found that I was looking for his approval and affirmation, and I was trading on my encounters to get something from him where actually it's God that really counts. And there are things like that which are quite subtle in one way, but they are things that are under the surface, and things that really are deeper motivations. And so when I was looking to present myself as a living sacrifice and go through the different realms in Hebrews 4:12, the realms of soul and spirit and thoughts and intentions of the heart, and then bone and marrow, I found that the thoughts and intentions of the heart were a much, much deeper level, and I had to be more honest with myself about some of the motives of my heart in the past. And another form of trading is withholding information, in that you may fear, if you're honest and open with somebody, that they may reject you, and your position may be at risk as a result of it. You know, so there was lots of things like that which I found were quite subtle motivations, but once I dealt with them, I could see them more clearly, and I avoided what the enemy's traps were, because they're traps. You know, they ensnare us and trap us into looking to get the world or things, material things, or even spiritual things, to meet my needs, what God wants to meet. So I need affirmation, approval, affection, love, acceptance, those things my soul needs, and the enemy offers them to us in the world. You know, and sometimes we can trade our time. Let's say we've got a family, and the enemy offers us security in our job, but we spend all our time in our job that gives us financial security and no time with our family. So we trade in that position which brings us security, and we receive the security, but we neglect and therefore affect our family. And so a lot of these things operate like that. And you know, in 3 weeks I went through all the trading floors, looked at everything I did in my life, and you know, I found it quite horrible, some of it. I was like, oh no, you know, and it was, but there was no condemnation attached to it, because God loves me and I know I'm righteous in him. So it wasn't a condemnation issue. It was just being aware and not allowing the enemy to trap me, to give me an exchange of things which will always bring a snare and will always bring some sort of bondage, rather than being open for God to do what he needs to do in me. You know, and so that's really how it worked with me. I know some people trade in a sense when people are teaching. I know when we had conferences here with Ian, people who had been used to the teaching that Ian brought, when he brought a revelation that they had not heard or that struck a chord with them, they came to the front and gave a small donation or offering to trade into that revelation as a sign that they wanted to exchange something in return for the revelation. And for us, we'd never really thought about that church-wise, and so it felt quite odd. But people who had been used to going to some of the Ian's conferences, they just came up while he was speaking, and we put a basket out there for them, and they just gave, you know, a small token often into that revelation to trade into it, so that as giving into it, they would exchange the revelation back. So that was an area where that sort of outworked. But I believe really it's all about the thoughts and intentions of the heart, and on the negative side of it, and in the positive side of it, it's really about covenant exchange and exchanging that which now belongs to us as being part of the kingdom and in relationship with God. So, you know, now I have the right to go to God as my Father and look to receive his fatherhood, because I present myself as a son. So if I surrender to him in sonship, he then exchanges that and gives fatherhood back. So there's a lot of things where that's really the gist of it. Yeah, but I think Natasha Gerbach from Ariel's Gate in South Africa, I think she does some teaching on it. Okay. I think Jason Westerfield might do some teaching on it, but not many people do. And you know,
do you find if it's an area or a stronghold that people may have to go to that trading floor more than once to work out the stronghold, or is it just a one-time thing for each issue?
Well, for me, I basically looked at my motives of my heart in regard to each of the trading floors that I saw Ian talk about, and there was one other that was expressed within the rebuilding of the temple, in Jerusalem with Nehemiah, and Nehemiah found that while he was away doing something, they had set up a room in the temple in which they allowed one of the enemy to be in the room. And so often there can be a trading floor in our own heart in which the enemy has occupation of and uses as the sort of the key to all the other issues. And I think it really operates through familiar spirits that lead us to certain behavioral patterns because they know to push our buttons in weak areas where we have had our needs met from the world. You know, rather than drawing from the life of God and finding all our needs met in God, we've had our needs met in the world, and therefore that becomes a weak area that sometimes we default to. And so I went back to the individual things of the specific areas. You know, Jezebel, you know, is an area. Athaliah, you know, is an area where you exchange your birthright. You know, and I actually found that I remembered an area in a previous church where I was an elder, but the leader, the main leader, I should have challenged him over some issues, but because of insecurity in my own situation, I kept silent, and that actually the enemy used to rob me of my inheritance because I was not prepared to speak up, and that was a negative trading of sorts. In that, you know, I should have spoken out, but I didn't because I was fearful. You know, so a lot of them are associated around fear or insecurity and things like that that get outworked. But I think if you ask God and you go to God, I didn't need to go back. I think you only need to go back as if you continue in that same area. But I was sufficiently aware of the areas that I was not going to trade there anymore. So that helped me. I think if there are things which are persistent strongholds, then what I did in dealing with them, I took each of the negative trading things that I'd done and I took them into the courts, and I stood under the judgment of God and confessed and acknowledged the accusations of those trades, repented, renounced the trading, then received judgment which declared me not guilty, but then released judgment against my familiars that sought to trap me into those areas. So then I had a mandate of separation to enforce in this realm against them. So every time a thought would come, I would say, no, I am mandated to take captive that thought and reject it rather than embracing it and going down a familiar pattern of behavioral thinking or emotional attachment. So I used the court system to break my connection to those different strongholds or mindsets or patterns of trading that I had been involved with. And some of them were things that I was no longer doing, but I wanted to make sure that I was not going to in the future give any access to the enemy to have an access to it into my life in that area. You know, so I dealt with it that way, and I never really felt I needed to go back. In a positive sense, most of my trading in a positive sense, I go and cast my crowns before God regularly and just want Him to get all the glory for everything that I do, because it's not about me, it's about Him, and I'm only serving Him so He gets the glory rather than me. And sometimes you have to remind yourself of that, you know, and it's not wrong to receive affirmation and encouragement from others. You know, I received lots of it on Facebook and things, but I made sure that I wasn't going to become hooked into that to meet a need in me. You know, God gives me my affirmation. That's all I need. You know, anything else is great, but I always offer it back to Him and make sure it's all about Him and not about me. So in that area, yeah. Okay. I mean, the other thing, the question Denise wanted, I mean, she's here now. I don't know if she wants to ask her question about the tree of life. Do you want to ask about the tree of life, Denise? No. Okay. I mean, I can give you a basic outline of the tree of life if you like. I mean, the tree of life really is a source of life, basically. And you can go and eat its fruit, and you can go and receive scrolls from it in following the pathway of the river of life. And it's a place within the realm of God's garden that you can go to regularly and engage in. I can take people there. I've taken lots of people there. The fruit there, there's fruit which is continually in season that gives you a resource to your life. The leaves are like scrolls, and there's revelation there that you can take for particular areas of your life. You know, it's a source. You know, it flows from the throne of God, and the river of life flows, and the tree of life is there within the river as a source. You know, and it's for me, it's part of my pathway of relationship where I engage there in intimacy to receive for my own life whatever I need to accomplish whatever I need to accomplish. And out of that, then I use that source to go back into the realms of heaven to rule and to establish rulership and authority. So, you know, the tree of life itself is a pathway, really, that we follow to engage the source. And beyond the tree of life is the throne of grace. And beyond that, there's the judgment seat. And before the tree of life is the garden of God and waterfalls. And yeah, it's a beautiful place in God's garden. When Adam and Eve were initially placed in the garden that God created for them to tend and cultivate, the tree of life was accessible to them because heaven and earth overlapped. They could walk in the garden with God, and God could walk in the garden with them. So they had access to God's garden. They had access to the tree of life. They had access to those things then. Now, when they sinned, they were the access to God's garden was closed, and so they could no longer engage in the realm of the spirit, and the whole world, in actual fact, was moved out of where it was and placed out into time and space, because time really only began as a result of Satan's fall. And when Adam fell, it placed the earth into that time, so that when time is no more, nothing of Satan or the memory of it or the memory of any sin can be into the age to come, because it's contained within time. And so that really was their access. And of course, they couldn't access the tree of life in their sinful state, because then they would have lived forever in sin. And so God put the cherubim and the fiery sword there to stop them accessing back into heaven and into the realm of God, the garden of God there. But of course, Jesus has opened that access back up for us, in that we can engage and engage through our own spirit back into the realm of heaven through that pathway. But it's a beautiful place, and there's beautiful fruit, and people see all sorts of colors and different things relating to where they are at any particular time and what they need as a source. And when you eat the fruit, you sort of really take things deeply into your own life around that. Okay, it looks like Denise is back. We've just been talking about the tree of life.
I've been listening on my other computer. Just
okay.
Technical issues. Yeah.
So is there anything else you want to ask about the tree of life?
When you say that you go access it,
yeah,
you just how do you do that? Do you just ask the Holy Spirit to take you there, or you just rest in Christ and you go there, or how does it happen?
How does it happen? Well, for me, it's become a pathway that I can just access whenever I like, because I've revisited it and gone there time and time and time again, and so I can just access that by stepping through my first love gate. Is how I access it. It's like in my spirit, I have the presence of the kingdom, and within that presence is where the Father, the Son, and the Spirit dwell, behind the first love gate. And you think of Revelation 3:20, Jesus is knocking at that gate, and he's basically saying, let me in, And when we open that, and I open that on a daily basis, his presence comes within my spirit, and then my desire then is that the river of life, which is often trickling through that gateway, it becomes a flow, and that flow goes through my spirit gates. There's a scripture in Psalm, I think 46, which says, there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God. And so that river splits into the streams that flow through my gates of my spirit to engage my soul and eventually my body and flowing out through. And so that's a pathway that I've developed in relationship, so I can engage that river of life within the garden of my own heart and cultivate it and maintain it and grow it and create in there things, because I have the creative ability to produce things in there and do things. But if I go back through that gateway, that gives me access to follow the river of life back into the garden of God, directly into the realm of heaven. I don't need to go through the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven, which I do if I'm going to rule. I go straight into the garden of God, and I can engage the river there, the waterfalls, the garden of God, Father's garden. I can engage lots of those places, and I do that by just stepping through that gateway. But of course, I've done it, hundreds and thousands of times. So for me, it's just a well-trodden path that I just think about going to the tree of life, and I can go there. When I take people, I would take people through that and just lead them there, which we can do. We can do that as an exercise if you want. It's a great place to go, and you can engage in some of the things that are there. For a lot of people, some people have experiences and encounters of going to places like that, but again, they don't know how to get back there because they don't reaffirm the pathway and make it their pathway. I mean, I've got a key to open up the door to people to go, but people have to develop the doorway for themselves, so it becomes their doorway of access. And of course, we all see things differently in that realm, and we experience things and sense things differently because it's designed for us. The whole realm of heaven is multiversed in that it's designed for us to encounter God uniquely according to how he's made us. And so although there are some principles and patterns of things that are there, when we get there, we can stand in the same place because there's no space. We can all be at the throne of grace, engage with God intimately as if we're the only person there. And so another billion Christians could also be there in the throne of grace. No, it isn't that way, because most people don't know how to get there and go there. They just think they're praying rather than going personally and engaging the throne of grace. But in reality, if every single believer was there at the same time, because time is at a different factor, we could all engage God intimately, and he could engage us and be totally unaware of anybody else, because heaven works that way. So it is a place that we learn to go to and then go back to and go back to again by stepping in, by faith, stepping in, and let my spirit engage there, and practice developing those pathways, because if you don't practice, then you don't anchor your experiences and encounters, and they don't become doorways. They become memories. But if you don't re-engage the memory, then you can't use the memory as the doorway to go through to re-engage. And that's really how it works. It's re-engaging through initial encounter and going back and establishing it as something that you can engage with. And there are many other places that people find that become very intimate personal places for them, that are just designed by God for those special places. You know, everyone's garden is different because we're different, and our secret places look different. You know, there may be a river of life there, but you know, I always engage in a meadow and lie down in green pasture by the green rivers. I've also planted lots of trees and fruit. I have fruit of testimony that was in my garden. I have mountains there, waterfalls. I have a secret place that I go to, which was a special place that God first showed me before I even knew I had a garden in my heart. I thought I was with him in his garden and he was with me in mine. But the piece of grass that was there was no more than 10 feet square, because I'd never ever developed anything else, you know. And it was like, oh, this is where I am. But now I have a dimensional place within the garden of my heart which has mountains in the distance and a whole load of things that I've planted and cultivated and grown and developed by going there, you know, because it's my garden and I have the right to create in it, you know, different plants and flowers and all sorts of things. You know, I engaged my spirit the other day, and I'd never really thought about my spirit too much, because I just sort of embraced God there, and then we'd go somewhere and do things. But I was asked a question: well, what does your spirit look like? Does it look like your garden? And I thought, oh, I've never really thought, what does my spirit look like? I just engage the door and open it, and I engage the doors that go out through it. So I decided to engage in worship, and I thought, in our worship time here on a Sunday, I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to go and look. What is the door? What is the door into? What does it look like for the realm of the kingdom within me? So I had a closer look, and I went to perceive, and I found that the doorway of first love was like into a almost like a pillar of cloud, and it just went up and up and up, and I just couldn't see the top of it. And then I looked around and thought, oh, I saw the river of life flowing out. And then I thought, okay, where am I? And it was like I'm on a mountain. So my spirit is like a mountain. And on the mountain there was a throne, which is where I give the seat of government of my life to the Lordship of Jesus. And next to it, that throne, there was another throne that he allows me to sit on while he trains me to occupy lordship and then kingship and sonship. And so that was what it was. And then the river was flowing down and became 9 streams that went through the different gates, or 8 gates went through the different gates of my spirit out to engage my soul. And I suddenly had the thought, I wonder if I can create things here. And I couldn't. And God said to me, I created your spirit before the foundation of the world, and I made it to be who you are, and you don't get to change that. But your soul, you can get to change and transform according to the desires that were within your spirit to be able to transform it. So that's how it worked. That's how it worked for me, and I could engage in that and experience it. So yeah. I mean, I don't know if you want to, look at doing an activation exercise in terms of any of those things. I'm very happy to do that, or just any more questions or whatever you'd like to do, really. So.
I'm in. An activation would be fun. I don't know about everybody else.
Okay. So have you done any activations in anywhere in your own garden, in the garden in heaven? Have you sort of, where have you had any encounters yourself?
I know that Colleen and I have. I don't know about Denise.
Okay.
I think Colleen.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not really sure. Okay. All right. Well, let's just engage, and we'll see where the spirit sort of directs us to go. Often there's a place where you can go and flow from one to the other. So we'll have a look at it. Yeah, what I just encourage you to do is to just close your eyes and begin to allow your spirit to engage the screen of your imagination, and just want you to think about Jesus and the first love gate within your spirit, and just think of Jesus just knocking at that gate within your spirit, and you just reach out, you open the door, and as you open the door, you sense a flow of the river of life around you, and you sense the presence of God who surrounds you with his presence, affirms you. Just sense how he speaks affirmation to you. Feel his heart for you. Feel the desire that he has for you for intimacy. And just feel the river of life, the energy as it flows through you. There's no obstacles or hindrances for it to just flow through you. But as it does, it energizes you, provides life. And feel the life and the flow of heaven that's flowing through you as you stand there in your spirit. Now, just allow his presence to come around you. Just feel your heart warmed to his presence. Feel his glory just come around you. As his life surrounds you. Now just allow Jesus to take you by the hand and invite him to take you through into the garden of your heart. And he will just walk with you into the garden of your heart, where you sense the freedom of his life with you, the joy and the peace and the love that flows from him within the garden of your heart. And I just encourage you to just lay down and just think of the Lord as your shepherd. He makes you lie down in green pastures. And he is there with you, your head resting on him. Just feel his desires for you. Feel his love for you. Just share your heart with him. You may want to ask him a simple question about how he feels about you, and just sense what flows from him to you. And beside that place, there is the river of life that's flowing, those quiet waters that are flowing through your heart. And Jesus would just take you into the river. It flows through you. You can go under the water. You can breathe in the life. There may be things on the bottom of the river that are there for you to pick up. Just sense the flow of that river, that life, that energy. Now Jesus will take you by the hand again. Now he is going to take you through, back through the first love gate, through the dimension between this, the veil between this realm and that realm. And he's going to take you to the river that's flowing in heaven itself. And I want you to breathe in the atmosphere of heaven and sense the fragrance and the sounds of heaven, the life in the river there that you're in. Again, feel comfortable to swim, to dive, to go under the water, to see what's there on the bottom. Where I am right now, there are gemstones. Feel free to take what's there if you're drawn to anything. Now he wants you to look and just look to follow the river and look over to the right hand side, and there's a waterfall that's flowing down. As you think of that waterfall, just stand under that waterfall as it flows down and sense the energy and the life that's cascading down deep, calling out to deep at the sound of that waterfall. You know, deep calling out to deep. Your whole being begins to vibrate with the energy and the vibrancy and the sounds that are touching your deepest, innermost being. Now you can just begin to go up that waterfall. There's no resistance as you flow up. And as you get to the top of the waterfall, along the side of the river, there's a pathway. And you can get out and walk along the pathway. Sense the fragrance. Everything is living. Everything is alive. Everything has feelings and emotions and fragrances. Just sense that as you walk along the pathway. Just breathe it all in. Let all of your senses engage with it. Now ahead of you, there's a bridge, and standing on that bridge is Jesus. And as you walk up to him, you can look into his eyes and sense his love. And he asks you to remove all your burdens, anything you're carrying, any weight of responsibility, any heaviness that you have within your life right now. His arms are outstretched, waiting for you just to cast all your burdens onto him. Any sorrows that you carry, and cast them all onto him. He longs for you to exchange everything that you're carrying for his peace. And as you exchange those things, feel the lightness, and he allows you just to walk across the bridge, taking the access into the Father's garden, where you can walk in and you can meet with the Father. Place of rest, of peace. Sense all the life that's in the Father's garden. Now the Father just shows you over into the corner of the garden. There's a waterfall flowing down into a beautiful deep blue pool. He takes you to the pool and he encourages you to dive in. And just swim down to the very bottom of the pool, and at the bottom of the pool there is a chest that's open, that contains golden coins and other things. These are the vast sum of the thoughts that the Father has for you, the thoughts that he had for you before creation, the thoughts that were his for you and your spirit and your destiny. And take one of those thoughts and allow the thought to impact the whole of your being. You can place that coin within your heart, you can eat it. Allow the thought of God about you to touch you. Allow the Father's voice to speak that thought to you as he expresses his heart's desire to you. Now, as you just float back up to the surface, you can see the waterfall cascading down. Just float up that waterfall, follow the river up, and in the river just look ahead of you, and ahead of you there's the tree of life. Just walk towards the tree, seeing that there are scrolls on the surface of the water. If you're drawn to one, feel free to take a scroll, take it within you, but look at the tree, see the fruit. You can reach out and take the fruit that you're drawn to most. Take it, eat it, and as you bite into it, sense the taste, the fragrance, the emotions, the fullness of that fruit and how it impacts you, how it touches you, how you feel. Just take that fruit, eat it. Now the tree just becomes a pathway that you can walk right through, following the river, and ahead of you there is the throne of grace. Walk up to it. God reaches down lifts you up onto his lap. You feel his compassion and his heart for you. You look into his eyes. He asks you, what are your deepest needs right now? Just begin to share with him the deepest need or the deepest needs you feel to share with him. And as you share, just feel the grace and mercy which is flowing into those needs, flowing into your life, meeting those needs. Deeper and deeper and deeper. He wants you to feel at total rest and at total peace, secure. He wants you to feel the expanse of heaven. So he would just take you to a place where there's freedom right now, and he expresses himself in kingly form to you as the lion. Feel the expanse of heaven, the color, the sound, the frequency of heaven. Feel how free you are, how safe, how secure you are. The lion, the king, being your protection, your shield. Just feel the freedom, new horizons opening, new experiences, new encounters. He wants you to feel at rest so you can lie down, resting on him as he's at total peace, total security, completely enveloped and safe and secure with him. Now Jesus again just takes you by the hand and he leads you back through the veil into the garden again, where you can stand by the river and take a testimony of what you've encountered today, and you can just make a little hole by the river in the ground, plant that testimony as a seed. It may be a specific thing he said, it may be the thoughts that you had for him, of you, and it may be something you just feel special. Just plant it, water it, just take some water from the river of life and put it in the seed, cover it up, and just speak life to it. Command it to grow. And as it grows before you and fruits, you can use that tree and the fruit of the testimony to re-engage, to go back into it, to engage others with it. It becomes the testimony that you begin to cultivate your garden with the testimonies of your experiences, of the memories that you have as you encounter God. They become that which flourishes within your garden, that which you create within your garden. And just think creatively about what you would want in your garden. Maybe a secret place a place of intimacy, a place where it's just you and him. And think about that, and maybe you create that place. Within my place there's a tree with a swing, and the Father just pushes me, and we just commune and fellowship. But just see that your spirit can create a secret place for you, a place of intimacy and engagement, a place of peace and rest within the garden of your own heart. Now feel free now just to step back through the veil back into this realm, bringing with you the reality of what you've encountered that will become a doorway to future encounters. Ooh. Okay. So feel free to share anything you would like to share, a testimony of that if you like, or if it's precious and you want to keep it to yourself, that's fine. No problem with that. Yeah. Okay.
I would love to hear what Colleen says. Colleen, do you know you can unmute your mic at the top of the screen?
I can unmute it for her, it's okay.
Okay, thanks. Does that sound better now?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Okay. I still have trouble seeing more, but it's getting better. And so I saw, a few things today, but I certainly felt his presence and got a few souvenirs to plant.
Okay. When it comes to seeing, allow your spirit to communicate with you. Not everyone necessarily sees in a visual form, but you perceive spiritually, and your spirit can enable you to perceive by knowing where you are and sensing what it's like to be in the river, to be under the waterfall. Not everyone's always visual. A lot of what I know where I am and I can describe it, but I don't always just see it as a total vision. I can engage my different senses by practicing.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you do that, the more attuned your spirit becomes, and the more you sense and where you are, and you everything becomes more tuned to it, and then it becomes a more real experience. You feel it, sense it in different ways.
Right.
But in terms of if you really want to develop the seeing part, just use a picture to help you engage your imagination in it, because your imagination is where all these things take place. They take place on a screen within your mind.
Right.
Whether you are there first person, seeing it in a sense that you just see a vision, or you're stepping into the vision, or whether you activate your imagination. So if it's like a door, how do I open my first love gateway? Then just get a picture of a door and just think about it. Everyone can activate their imagination. It's like, just think of your own front door, and then close your eyes, and in closing your eyes, just begin to picture in your imagination your front door. It's just a simple exercise which enables you to engage. If it's like, okay, I need to engage with the river, just get a picture of a river and just begin to think about it. All things start with thinking about it, fixing our thoughts on it, and then allowing our imagination to picture it. And some people get very clear pictures, some people get more impressions, but you will be able to actually see more as you practice it. It grows in with the practice.
Mm-hmm.
In that way.
Okay. I have been seeing more. It's been good. for sure. But sometimes just little quick flashes.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
I was just, just being in his presence, and it was like I saw a window just, and I saw a scaly creature kind of fly by, and I asked him. I said, "Okay, what's that?" I figured it was a dragon. What and where was that? And then I don't know if it was that time or the next time I was on my mountain. Now, I did one of your activations once where you had people go to their mountains, and I sat with the people, and I received a red mantle and a sword at
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
So when I was on the mountain, I ended up, sorry, I thought I muted that, but I didn't. When I was on the mountain, I ended up seeing a dragon, and it was just kind of circling, and one thing I did was just stuck it up in the air because I knew I had it, and it just kind of flew over top and just kind of pierced, and things came out, and then the next, it was like just very simple. And when I was talking to someone about it, they said, well, it was maybe because it didn't expect to be challenged, and so you took it by surprise. It was just circling and didn't think you were a threat, and then it just, I'm assuming it went. Are there any repercussions from that when you do that kind of thing in the natural?
Not in a negative way, no.
Okay.
Because you've taken authority over it.
Right.
You've removed its authority to operate in the sphere that you have. What you will find is there should be a greater flow in that sphere, and that what was released from the dragon that it was blocking will begin to increase in your life. So there'll be a positive sense of it. I expect no backlash for anything, because I don't engage in spheres of authority that don't belong to me, and therefore it's my sphere. I'm not going to tolerate the enemy causing anything within my sphere. And so once I remove it, I've dealt with dragons and things like that, and ogres and giants and things, they're not going to intimidate me. And literally, when you lifted your sword up, it demonstrated that you knew your authority, and that's why you were able to defeat it. It's when we don't know our authority, it tends to dwarf us, and we see ourselves, like the children of Israel, they were grasshoppers in the sight of the giants. That's how they saw themselves. And if you see yourself like that, they will see you like that. You need to see yourself as you are. You are bigger than they are. You have greater authority than they do. This is your mountain and your sphere. They're just usurping the authority because we've never really identified how to occupy and administer from the kingdom. So no, I never expect anything like that. I expect the opposite. I expect a release of favor and blessing, because everything that was being blocked is now unblocked and able to, so if that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yep. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. Okay. Was there anything you wanted to share, Anna, on anything you've seen, or feel free?
For me, I have traveled there before, and the differences were, I think I would call it a realm of faith, and regularly, I don't know how to explain this. A long time ago, Papa God invited me to go through his stomach, and when you go in him, the universe is in the expanse is just wide open. Well, so he as a lion is there with me, and when you say lay down, it was on nothing. It was just resting in thin air.
Yeah, that's what it's like. Yeah, and it's almost like you feel connected to everything in that place. It's just total, complete peace.
The outcropping for me was a sense of security.
Yeah.
When you have that experience, your finances, your career future, all those things no longer matter. You have this sense of Papa has it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. Fine. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Well, if we, I probably need to leave it there. I've got a